Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us for today's very special online workshop, Ask a Career Coach with Carly Goldsmith. My name is Jeff Murphy, and I'm an Associate Director in the BU Alumni Relations Office, as well as a proud alumnus of the BU Graduate School of Management. Today's event is sponsored by the BU Alumni Association and is offered to our 300,000 alumni around the globe. Throughout your career, the BU Alumni Association is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals. We aim to do this by providing alumni with access to a series of valuable online tools and social media communities. It's important to us that we get your feedback on how we're doing, so we very much look forward to receiving your feedback via a survey that will be emailed to you later today. Please know that we really do value your opinion on this program and everything that we offer. Before I introduce today's special guest coach, some brief housekeeping notes. As you know by now, this webinar is being hosted on the Adobe Connect online meeting platform. If you experience any trouble with the audio or visual portions of this presentation, I'm going to ask you to please contact Adobe Connect directly. If you want to jot this phone number down, Adobe Connect support is at 1-800-422-3623. That number again, 1-800-422-3623. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our career coach for the day, BU College of Arts and Sciences alumna Carly Goldsmith. Carly supports mid-career professionals in achieving greater career success, finding meaningful work, and living fulfilling lives. She brings over 18 years of human resource and business experience, including over 8 years with Deloitte, to work for her clients. While at Deloitte, she was part of the groundbreaking and innovative Coaching and Career Connections team, coaching professionals at all levels around navigating their careers and developing their management and leadership abilities. In 2009, she followed her passion and launched her own coaching business. Compassionate and intuitive by nature, Carly draws from personal and professional experience as well as her extensive training and certification in coaching for individuals, relationships, and teams. This is actually the second time we've asked Carly to offer a session for BU alumni, and I was thrilled when she agreed to participate in this new online workshop format that we're trying for the first time today. Carly, we've got folks joining us from Los Angeles, New York City, Florida, Vermont, Arizona, and I know we even have one alum who is dialing in from Mumbai, India. I just wanted to thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to make such important contributions to BU alumni who literally are all over the world. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome, Jeff. Thank you.
Sure. So here's how today's going to work, folks. We're going to start things off with Carly answering some of the questions that you all submitted when you signed up for this event. Obviously, many of you submitted some great questions, and Carly had a chance to review those in advance. So we'll kick things off with her addressing a couple of those, and then we'll open it up for questions. There's a couple different ways that people are going to be able to ask questions today. First and foremost, if you did take advantage of the dial-in phone option, you see instructions hopefully on your screen in front of you. I'll ask people to raise their hand. You should see an icon on your screen for what looks like a very, very small human raising their hand. So if you can click that when we get to that point. Elaine, thank you for raising your hand. We're testing that out. It's working. So we can do that, and then you can actually unmute yourself using the phone line. And then, of course, you all should see the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. You're welcome to type in with a question at any time during the presentation today, and we'll make sure to cover those as well. So bear with us. Hopefully all of you have your phone line muted right now. We should start out that way. And again, we'll call on people to go ahead and unmute your line, and we'll see how that works. So Carly, let's kick it off. The floor is all yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. Whenever I hear the bio read, it sounds so official, but I love it. I am so excited to be back with my BU alumni today, my fellow alumni for this event. It is really wonderful to be here. And I agree, Jeff. There were some wonderful questions that came in, very, very insightful, and all across different career challenges that all of us face. So what I did was I took the opportunity to review some of those questions in advance. I pulled together kind of the top 5 thematic questions that I saw. I'm going to start by going through a couple of those, and then I'll break and ask for more questions because some of these might be questions that I'm answering that were yours, that you posed, and then you might have some other ones that come up. So don't hesitate to raise that hand or type a question in the Q&A box because I want us to be as interactive as we possibly can. So this first question I saw a number around changing careers, and a number of you had been concerned, hey, when I'm changing careers, how do I market myself? How do I make sure that prospective employers are going to be able to see the transferable skills that I have? So a couple of key points that I would have for this is really do all that you can to connect the dots for prospective employers. So it's really important that you're the one that's shaping that conversation. You help them to see how your previous skills will relate to what you are trying to do. I work with a lot of career changers. It's the bulk of my clientele. And one of the ways that we do it is we work to craft really effective brand statements, ways to say who you are, what you do, and most importantly is you help X do Y. So you could show the value proposition that you have for the prospective employer. I pulled one of my clients who's in the middle of, I would say she's pivoting her career. She's taking some of her previous experience and she's trying to take something that was part of her job but focus it a little bit more. And so her statement that is on the top of her resume, on her cover letter, on LinkedIn, was that she's a communications and operations professional, and she increases organizational performance by aligning people to business objectives. So very simply, she connects the dots for prospective employers with that brand statement. And again, she's using it in different ways. The second tip I'd have for career changers in particular is to rely more heavily on networking and informational interviewing and having those conversations so that way you're not just lost in a resume database where it doesn't feel like there's a connection between where you've been and where you're going. So for those of you who are making career changes, pounding the pavement, having those conversations are really helpful. I love informational interviewing. If it's something that you've never done before, it's really helpful. So it's about finding connections. Maybe it's finding fellow BU alum through the LinkedIn group, or finding other people that you know in your network who could tell you what would it be like to do this job. The more connections you make, the better. I had a client, again, she was trying to make a change, and one of the things she did was she called up a former colleague who was doing the work now that she wanted to do, and she said, here's my background, here's my resume, what do you see, what are your concerns, would I be qualified, what should I emphasize? And so she was really able to get that insight that helped her, again, shape her story, how she was connecting, what she was saying, and what she was putting on her resume. So that's the second tip. The third tip is to moonlight, if you will, kind of try to obtain some direct experience in the new work that you want to do. This could be really helpful for career changers, whether you're doing it internally, say within your organization, and you're helping out a department who's doing the work that you want to do, or maybe it's work on the side. I had a client, again, of mine who went to school. She's going to school for to do user experience, user design, and so she knew that she wasn't doing that right now at her job, and she was doing her project work while she was getting her master's in this. She actually found the department internally at her company that was doing that work and started to, get a little bit of a project going so she could get some direct experience that then helped, again, connect those dots. And then the last one here, which might be a little bit interesting, but I find this to be really, really helpful, is have the right mindset. I have found, and I've seen with my clients, that when you believe that you've got the skills, the transferable skills to really move your career in a different direction, that those that you are talking to through the interview process, they're going to believe as well. If you doubt, if you feel insecure about those skills that you've got and you don't think the leap will be made, that's going to come through. It happened to a client of mine. She very much thought, I'm never going to get the job I want. I'm never going to do it. Although she had tons of experience that was transferable, degrees, you name it. She just had this mindset that was very limiting. And when we worked to change that, I cannot tell you how the doors opened because she was showing up in a very different way, and and folks could see that, they could feel that, they knew that not only was she passionate about that, she was confident about her skills and ability, and they're much more willing to take a risk on someone who's making a change to a new direction. So that is a lot about career change, some of my top tips for what you need to do to make sure that you are that those transferable skills are more apparent to prospective employers. So let me go to the second one before I open it up to questions. So the second one was really interesting. A lot of you were talking about the job search process and applying for jobs online. I'm not getting responses. Is there a trick to getting them to call you back? I will say that unfortunately in today's landscape, I would almost expect to hear no response versus expecting to hear a response, especially if the only thing you're doing is applying for positions online. The first bullet I've got here is to spend your time wisely. What I see from experience and from different studies and research that has been out there is that 2 to 5% of people are getting a job just by applying for jobs online and waiting to hear back. 75 to 80% are getting jobs because they're networking, they're connecting with people, they're really getting that foot in the door. So I would say for you, spend time wisely. If you're just applying online, you'll know it takes hours just to fill out those darn forms online, and then you feel frustrated because you're not getting that return on investment. So use it almost like a dual approach, if you will. If you're going to be using your time online to see open positions, also look for what connections do I have? Do I have a way into this organization? Do I know someone who does this? LinkedIn is going to be your most powerful tool for this. Look at your first, second, your third degree connections that you've got. Look to see in your groups, is there anyone that you know there? Do you see recruiters out there who are posting the positions on LinkedIn that you could also make connections with? So really try to do more than just applying online. LinkedIn, let me talk a little bit more about that. We could probably do a whole session just on LinkedIn, but to hit the high points, I find this to be really in making a change and getting a job to be one of the most powerful tools out there, especially with the functionality that they have. Again, leveraging those first, second, and third degree connections. I had a client of mine, actually it was colleagues, so I helped to make this connection. So it was someone that I knew that I worked with previously. She knew me, and she saw that I knew someone who knew the hiring manager at an organization that she wanted to work at. So she contacted me, I contacted my person, and then made the connection, and it was amazing. Within 24 hours, she got an interview for that company and for that opening. So you never know what kind of connections can be made. With groups, one of the things that I really love about groups is this is also a way for you to build your brand and your name recognition. Be active, share information. So, if there's groups around so many different areas, pick the area, the industry that you're in, and start becoming known in that industry, and you'd be surprised at how you could make connections. A lot of recruiters are also using LinkedIn to find out about you, and are you connected, and what have you done before? Like I said before, there's job postings there. You could search companies. The recruiters are on there. You've got your alumni networks, both schools and former companies. The advanced search feature is something that I certainly stress for my clients to use a lot, because you could find other people with similar job titles within the company. You can find companies who are doing the work that you'd like to do. Just this morning, I had a conversation with a client of mine who is interviewing at another company, and she thought everything sounded great, but she wanted to hear the true story story, the real scoop. Is this an organization she should work at, and was the work actually what they were promising her? So through LinkedIn, she found someone who was doing that job at the company, and said, hey, would you be willing to have a conversation? She didn't know this person, but she reached out through LinkedIn and was able to get that real inside scoop, and I think she's going to accept the offer, which is pretty awesome. And then my last tip here is making direct contact. So oftentimes we think, oh, we've got to find a name for the hiring manager or the recruiter. Sometimes you could just pick up the phone, through the switchboard and say, hey, can I be transferred to the recruiter's voicemail? Or, who's the manager of X department that you're looking to work in? And you're able to get directly into a voicemail at least, or get connected. Another interesting thing, and I don't know how many people have heard of this, but there's a woman by the name of Liz Ryan, a former HR exec. She's a writer now. She's an influencer on LinkedIn, and she talks about what she calls pain letters. So instead of doing your standard resume and cover letter and applying, she really recommends that you keep an eye at companies, what's changing. When can you see that they're going to be in pain? They're growing, they're changing. Your skill set is going to be able to add value to that organization. That will make a difference. It will alleviate their pain. So do a targeted letter. Hey, I recognize that X is happening, based on what I've read and researched about your company. I've got this skill set. I think I can help you. Can we talk? And oftentimes through LinkedIn, you're going to be able to find the name of that person, who might be, the hiring manager of that department, or maybe even the website of that organization. So kind of an interesting tact to utilize is that pain letter, and really reaching out in that way. So those are my first two questions. I feel like I have been talking a lot, so let me check at this point. Does anyone want to raise their hand, ask a question either via the phone line or type something in Q&A box?
Carly, we have one question that came in through the Q&A already, and folks, again, if you've dialed in and want to ask a question live on air, so to speak, just click the icon of the person raising their hand, and we can give you a call. Carly, I want to say one thing. You talked obviously a lot about LinkedIn, and I want to make sure our guests know we've got some great resources on our website, specifically about how to use LinkedIn. We've had 2 alumni in the last year who've done hour-long presentations about how to build and maintain a powerful BU network via LinkedIn, so I really encourage everybody to check out those webinars on our website, which you can get to at bu.edu/alumni. And Gay has a follow-up question about LinkedIn, about the privacy of it. She's concerned about the confidentiality around using LinkedIn. How do you use that resource without sort of tipping off to your current employer that you're kind of searching?
Yeah, so that is a fantastic question. And LinkedIn has planned for that, right? Because they want to make sure that you're not broadcasting to the world. So if you go into LinkedIn, there, right, usually where your picture icon is, if you click on that, you're going to get some options there. When you could select the option to change your privacy settings, and what you could actually do is turn off any broadcast notifications that would let anyone in your network know that you are making updates to your profile, and then there's also a privacy setting about who can view, what do people see when you have viewed their profile. So there's some pros and cons. If you have it set so people can see all of your information when you view their profile, they will get a notification that says, Carly Goldsmith has looked at your profile today. And that could be great because I've seen some connections made. I had a client last week tell me, I saw a recruiter looked at my profile. So I connected with her through InMail, and we are now talking about potential opportunities. The other thing you might want to do is stalk people anonymously. So you could change it to anonymous, and someone won't know that they've that you've been viewing their profile. So there are some privacy settings that you could change on LinkedIn that really help in that concern. So thanks. Great question, Gay.
Doreen, you had raised your hand. Did you have a question you wanted to ask? If so, go ahead and if you're calling in with a phone line, just hit *6 to unmute yourself. Fair enough. We'll keep trying this, folks. Don't get discouraged. Carly, Jeremy had a follow-up question about what you just talked about. You had mentioned identifying the company's pain point for a targeted letter. How do you do the research to figure out what the company's pain points are?
Yeah, so I would say you could do that in a number of ways. Are you following the company and what's happening in the news? Are you following that company on LinkedIn, right? So you could hear and see what's going on. There's change that slide there. So there's a number of different ways that you could think about it. I had someone who recognized that a company was, I think they had posted online that they were merging with another organization, and part of what he had done was a lot of, merging of technologies and, all of that, and that integration between organizations, and so there was a pain point. Saw that two companies were merging, they were probably going to need technology support, and to integrate systems between the two organizations, you could write a targeted pain letter based on that. I've got that skill set, I've done it before, I want to do that. So hopefully that helps. Jeremy?
All right, folks, anybody want to raise their hand at this point?
Jeff, can you hear me?
I can. Is it Doreen?
It's Doreen. Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm using all this technology correctly.
We're all figuring it out together, so don't even worry about it. But go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thanks. Hope I didn't interrupt. Hi, Carly. Thanks. This is Doreen, and my question is about getting back into a job, a career, so to speak, after having been in and out for about 15 years raising kids. Been home raising kids, trying to keep my hand in things, and doing different jobs. And the problem I often encounter is that my resume, I apply for jobs that I appear to be overqualified for because I feel like I'm getting back in. And so if I can get into the interview, it usually serves me well. But I often hear, gee, why would you want to do this? Looking at your resume, you've done so much. And yet, and I don't get hired sometimes because they think, they said to me, we can still be bored in this position. On the other, you'll get tired of it quickly, so to speak. On the other hand, I'm not really qualified to apply for other jobs because I have been in and out of it, So I keep getting caught in this kind of conundrum. I'm guessing it's just going to be tricky, but I don't know if you had any suggestions to that end.
Doreen, I love it, and I have to say, I'll fast forward now to my slide number 3 because I did read your question, and I've seen it. I've seen it a lot, right? And I see it. Hey, I'm trying to re-enter after, kind of scaling back on my career or taking a big step back as a parent, or I've had some people, hey, I'm just a solopreneur. I'm working for myself for a while, or I'm a freelancer, and now I want to get back into a full-time employment situation. What do I do? So I would say it is absolutely tricky, and your situation that you're describing, I've had a couple of clients who have gone through that as well. I'm going to look at let's see, my third bullet point down is finding a transition position, as I like to call it, is not necessarily the position that's going to be absolutely perfect, but an opportunity that will get you over that hump of having a resume that doesn't make sense or makes it feel like overqualified, underqualified. So a client of mine that I worked with, gosh, it's 2 years ago now, she stayed at home 4 years with her kids and was getting back in. And she ended up taking a contract position for 6 months. And it was, it wasn't the perfect job, but it was a great way to get her foot back in the door. And it was lower risk. Because it was almost like a test for both of them. Hey, is this something I want to do? Is this something the company wants me to do? And it was less of a commitment, if you will, than a full-time opportunity. And as it turned out, they ended up extending the contract for 9 months, and then she became full-time. So she's now at about the 2-year mark from the day she started contracting, and she's now ready to start going out there and doing the job search again. And I had another client, he did the same thing. He wasn't a working parent, but he had been self-employed for 10 years and was now trying to get back in. And he was hearing a lot of the same things that you're hearing as a as a parent who had, stepped out of the workforce for a little bit. And so he did the same thing. He got a position. It wasn't exactly perfect, but has got his foot back in the door. And now, after I think a year and a half, he was able to get back out there, and then ultimately got the job that he wanted to get previously, but now he was seen as more of a viable candidate because he had that position. Does that help, Doreen? That's one of the most...
It does help. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know if you can hear me. It's very helpful. I know it's a tricky situation, so yes, obviously, being willing to accept something where, one would be overqualified, or if it's a contract position. I think getting the foot in the door. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And here's another thing, Doreen, that I'd love to call your attention to. There is Carol Fishman-Cohen and Vivian Steer-Rabin. They have a book, a website, annual conferences, workshops. It's called I Relaunch. And so if you just look up irelaunch.com, you will get a ton of information. I'm not sure where you're based, but if you're based in the Boston area, they run annual conferences here where they specifically focus on working parents, who have been part-time or out of the workforce who are trying to get back in. They've got a ton of ideas as well.
Great. Thank you. Yes, I am in Boston, so I will look that up.
Perfect. Great. All right. Well, fantastic question there, Doreen, and I really appreciate it, and I think a lot of folks, I saw some similar ones to that. So let me go to a couple of my other bullet points around this and what you could do to kind of get back in. The other point that I have is really working on your resume, having that right resume. Again, just like the career changer really needs to connect the dots, so does someone who's re-entering back into the full-time workforce. So really focus on that first third of your resume. I have an alliance with a professional resume writer, and so he and I work together with my clients to do this, and he's very focused on having that brand statement on the top, and pulling together at the very top your professional summary, the highlights of everything that you've done. So that way, again, you're making it easy for potential employers to see what your value is and what you can offer. And then the second kind of sub-bullet here is to be selective, not exhaustive. My client who I was talking about before, who took 4 years off of the, to stay home with her kids, she wasn't doing nothing during that time. She, did some, freelance work and consulting on the side. She worked on boards with her schools, or, she did a number of different things. I had another client who, he took a job part-time for a couple of days a week at Pottery Barn, and they got great discounts when he was a stay-at-home dad while his wife was working. So there's a number of different things that people are doing, but you don't necessarily have to put all on your resume. Make sure that your resume is really being selective and highlighting what you want people to see. I always tell people, is your resume about where you're going or where you've been? Because if it's just everything in the kitchen sink about where you've been, you're not telling a compelling story for employers. So you really want to focus on where you're going, what you want to do. That second bullet about walking in their shoes, this is really about, stepping into that prospective employer. What do you think their concerns are going to be about you, and how are you going to address those concerns preemptively, either in how you craft your resume or how you talk in the interview, or, are you ready to answer some questions about that? And again, I think this is another place where you could use those pain letters to directly connect with employers. And then the last bullet point about engaging your advocates. I find that a lot of folks who are trying to re-enter, this is even more important to really use your network and people to to vouch for you, to say, hey, yeah, they may have been self-employed or a freelancer or a stay-at-home parent for a few years, but I know what they can give, and that usually helps, again, get over that hump of that transition back into the workforce. So great questions there. I'm glad I planned for it, Doreen. So any other questions at this point? Jeff, anything that's come in?
Yeah, we've got a couple questions, but I love doing this phone thing. So is there anybody bold enough out there to maybe want to hit the raise your hand button, and we'll get you unmuted and you can ask a question? Feel free to go ahead and raise your hand now. While you consider that, why don't we take one of the questions? Jeremy, you've got a raised hand. Why don't you go ahead and unmute your phone by hitting *6?
I think it says I'm no longer muted. Is that working?
Sounds good, Jeremy. Thanks for calling in.
Awesome. My question actually is, I was in the military for about 10 years. I just recently transitioned to business about 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking to find a good way to go about identifying different fields of interest and whether or not those would be right for me, I guess. I've done some of the informational interviewing, but what are other ways you can go about it? I'm guessing like reading books, and there's probably some other things out there. You said moonlighting and things like that, but what other ways would you recommend trying to identify sort of where your skill set best fits in different fields?
Yeah, that is a great question, Jeremy. Thank you. I think informational interview is certainly one. It's a great research tool, and reading different books as well. One of the things that I do a lot with my clients who are looking to make a change is I tell them to do this exercise where you could do a life story, a personal history. Actually, a career coach and really mentor and colleague of mine, Laura Berman Fortgang, talks about this a lot, is take time to look through what is your personal history been, your life story. What of all the things that you've enjoyed, pivotal moments? Has there been any things that you wanted to do that were cut off in the past? So it's really a different tact of looking back, almost to find the breadcrumbs that you've left for yourself along the way that might be able to point you in a different direction. One of the things that I often see is, you pull a couple of things from your past and you add something new to it, and that's how you create something different to go forward into a different industry or to a different career. So that's another great way. The other exercise, and I think this is also a nuanced way to think about it. Oftentimes, I think traditionally we think about strengths and weaknesses. Strengths are things that we do. We think they're things that we do well, and weaknesses are things that we don't do well. And if you change that definition slightly and think about it in a new way, it could really open up possibilities for you when you're trying to figure out what you want to do next. And this is looking at strengths as things that make you feel strong, that make you feel good when you're doing them. You feel engaged and motivated and effective and capable in doing those things. And weaknesses are things that drain you, that don't make you feel good. And this is sometimes a really great way to unhook you from saying, I have to do what I'm good at. Because if we think about our strengths and weaknesses in this way, you could be good at something that is a weakness because it drains you, and that's a way for you to leave it behind. And then maybe there's some things that you don't do so well yet, but you gravitate towards those. They're probably some natural strengths for you. So it could be some opportunity. So in addition to what you said, Jeremy, absolutely, try that exercise of looking back. See if you can find some themes or some breadcrumbs that might be pointing you in a new direction. Can you put some pieces of your past together to form a new path moving forward? And then really looking at strengths and weaknesses in a different way. So hopefully that helps. Sometimes it's about knowing yourself in order to do that external research a little bit more effectively.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Jeremy, thanks for calling in, and I see that you had a good handle on muting your line now, so if you could go ahead and hit *6 to do that for us. Hey, Sean, you chatted in with a great question, and I think it'd be great if you wanted to dial in and live. If by any chance, if you did dial in with the phone, if you want to go ahead and raise your hand, I think you asked a great question that would make for good. Perfect. You're raising your hand, Sean. Go ahead, hit *6 to unmute yourself and ask that question.
Hey there. Thank you. This has been a really great call so far. So thanks for hosting and great presentation so far. So my situation is unique in that I work from home for a large multinational company based in New York. I've been here about 15 years. Have been promoted twice, sort of smaller promotions, but really would like to advance my career vertically. You know, I'm not looking to be the CEO. I'm not looking to join the C-suite, but just move up and challenge myself, of course. You know, senior leaders have continuously told me over the course of my career that, you know, if you were in New York, you'd be promoted multiple times by then. Mm-hmm. So I would love kind of your assessment of how long would you advise that I, you know, keep trying to get promoted before I begin an external search. You know, I love the company. The work from home is a nice feature, certainly, but I'd like to, you know, take that next step up vertically. So any advice you could give would be much appreciated.
Yeah, that is a fantastic question, Sean, and it's interesting because I'm seeing it more and more often with a lot of my clients, to be honest. I think now that we have this ability, this greater ability to work from any place, it opens up opportunities, but it could also be potentially limiting as you're feeling. So I would think about it from this perspective. What are the concerns about you working from home and not having that face time? Because oftentimes we get that feedback, oh, you can't be promoted because you're not here. But what does that really mean? What are the actual concerns? What do they fear that you won't be able to accomplish because you're not in the office day to day? And then from there, that gives you some more specifics to say, okay, so how do I address this? I've seen a lot of folks, especially when they're leading virtually, you have to do a lot more explicitly that happens organically in a face-to-face environment. So, you know, you don't have the hallway chats, you don't have the elevator rides, but hey, can you use IM to have little quick chats to stay connected with people? Are you just having conversations with folks that are about the task at hand, you know, a project meeting, a status meeting, or are you actually having conversations that build relationships, build trust, get people to know you, feel connected? So oftentimes, you know, before you just give up, I would say find out what those concerns are. What do they see are the things that would be limiting? And can you start working on that to demonstrate that it wouldn't be a barrier to upward mobility? And you might be surprised if you're showing that you could be very effective in doing that. It might turn out to be a non-issue. But it all depends also on the culture of your organization. I have seen some organizations who are very focused on, you know, hey, you know, we're going to be successful if we're virtual, and that's fine. And other organizations that they just don't buy it as much. And so you may have to cut your losses at some point if culturally your organization is just never going to get there.
That's great. So, very helpful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Sean. And like I said before, if you could go ahead and make sure to hit *6 to mute your line, I'd really appreciate it. Beth, you chatted in with a great question. I'm hoping that you would do the same thing as Sean and go ahead and raise your hand, and we can ask your question in a live environment. And in the meantime, Borja, you have raised your hand. Do you want to go ahead and hit *6 to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question?
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Borja, thanks for calling in.
Sure. Carly, thank you so much for doing this. It's really helpful.
You're welcome.
So I'm calling in from San Francisco. Forgive me if there's some background noise. I'm actually outside from the Apple store. My question is, I've been, so I graduated in '98. I've been in the online marketing industry since then, working for 2 companies over that time. And after 14 years in the industry, I decided to go out on my own for about 2 years as an independent contractor. And recently, I decided to go back and work full-time for a company or start the process of exploring opportunities to become a full-time W-2 employee again. And I've had a few interviews with companies where the interviews have gone well, and we've gotten very close to sort of the offer stage. But what I found in 2 instances is that they liked me, but they felt that they would probably fill that job with someone less expensive, I guess for lack of a better word. And they thought that I would be a good fit, and then the question that they had to decide internally was, can we fill this position with someone who might be able to do the job at a lower cost? And so that was actually a conversation I had with one of the executives when we were sitting down face to face, and I sort of explained to him why I felt if I were in his seat, it might make sense to invest a little bit more in someone. And then ultimately they decided to go with someone else, and I believe, although I didn't receive confirmation, that the reason was in that case was that they found someone at a lower pay grade. So I'm just curious to get your thoughts on how to maybe deal with something like that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. Let me ask you this, did you experience that before you went out on your own, or does this feel
No, this is something that I've recently experienced. I mean, I'm in media, and I've always, I guess I've been working independently for about 2 years, and I just started looking for jobs, and this is actually a theme that I'm starting to sort of see a bit more recurring, I guess. And maybe it was just these 2 particular opportunities, but I found it interesting that that happened. And it was one of those things where it's a balance between trying to, you don't want to be too aggressive, but I did explain why I felt for that particular position, why they may want to reconsider hiring someone a little more senior, especially when you're dealing with contract negotiations and things of that nature, where someone with more experience might save the company more dollars in the long term, and therefore you might want to, think about those types of things. So, I didn't want to be too pushy, but I did sort of plant the seed on why it might make sense to pay a little more. And they still went in another direction, although they told me that, they felt that I could make a contribution. So, just throwing it out there.
Yeah, and my initial gut reaction is stay in touch with that company, because it would be interesting to see what happens 6 months to a year from now. And is your theory going to be right? And so that's one thing to think about. If you are hearing that specifically, that they're not questioning the value, but it's about, hey, can I get this at a bargain price? It might pay off for you, pay off to stay connected with those organizations, to again demonstrate your value. And the other thing I would say is are you applying for the right level position? Right? Sometimes the price point is off because maybe you can do higher level work, or are you underselling yourself in the positions that you're applying for?
Makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, great question.
Borja, thanks for the call. Go ahead and hit *6 to mute out your phone. And back to Beth. Beth, thanks for letting me know that you don't have phone access today. I think you chatted in with a great question, so let's cover this. Carly, so Beth is a recent graduate and with 5 years of entry-level experience at companies without much room for growth. Beth feels like she's overqualified for many entry-level positions, and the majority of her network consists of peers who are not in hiring positions. Do you have any suggestions of things that she can do to push herself towards a position where she can either grow more in a newer quote-unquote entry-level position, or at least get heading down that direction of mid-level career? Follow-up to that, I think she's also looking to network with folks intergenerationally. So she's feeling like her network is really young. How does she maybe get in touch with some more experienced folks?
Yeah, and that I'm glad you had that add-on because Beth, that was going to be my first bit of advice. Often what I hear you limiting yourself is to the first ring of your network. If you think about your network as like a pebble that dropped into a pond, right? You're that pebble in the middle, and then you've got rings that come out. That first circle is your peer group. It's the really close connection that you have. Well, guess what? Every single one of those people probably can connect you to someone within their path that is more senior to them. Who are their bosses? Even think about who your bosses are. Sometimes it doesn't hurt to say, who are your parents, your friend's parents. Try to do everything you can to look beyond just that inner circle of your network, and get that inner network to make the connection for you. It's reminding me of a client of mine a couple of years ago who I think it was actually through her boyfriend, who had done some volunteer work in an organization, happened to have met, like the CEO of a company she was interested in, and through her boyfriend, she got that connection, and so was able to meet with a pretty senior level person from that perspective. So think beyond that first level connection. Who do your network, your immediate network, know, and see if you could start making those connections there, which will open up. And I think oftentimes it can be having get some information from them about what do they see as your skills. Maybe you're positioning yourself as still a junior entry-level person. If you've got 5 years experience, you've got more than entry level. Usually 1 to 2 or 3 years is entry level in my book. So is there a way for you to get some feedback as well from those connections? Maybe it's just about how you're sharing your information and packaging your value proposition. It's a great question, Beth. Thank you.
We've got questions being chatted in, some really good ones, and I would encourage Karen, Anina, Lauren, all of you, if you wanted to go ahead and raise your hand and we'll unmute your phone. I'd love doing these sort of more conversational questions. Anybody else that wants to raise their hand, of course, you're welcome to do that as well. But in the meantime, why don't we go ahead? Anina has asked a quick question I think that we could get to fairly quickly. I want to make note that we've got just about 13 minutes left in the hour. So Anina has asked Carly if you can share some advice for somebody who, Anina doesn't appear to be looking to make a career change. She's just trying to keep things fresh. She's in a role where she feels like she's at the top. She enjoys the industry that she works in. But how do you sort of keep things fresh? How do you refresh yourself when you're in that situation?
Yeah, and I love that, Anina, because it is about how do we continue to learn and to grow. Oftentimes, what I would say is there opportunity? And actually, I pulled together one of my slides, talked about this. Slightly different question, but I think some of my tips. Is it this one? No. This one right here. Slightly different, Anina, but the tips are could be helpful as well. Oftentimes we need to find things outside of our current department. Sometimes we see ourselves as, we need to do work just in the group that we're part of. Can you get a cross-functional project, something that takes you beyond what you're doing in your organization to see a different part of the business, to maybe grow skills, a different perspective? So that could be one way to go. And then, a second thing is learning something new. Whether it be you're going to go take classes or get a new certification, something about deepening a skill set that you have or that you want to grow. And it could be outside of your day-to-day job, or maybe it's something that relates to your work. And sometimes just by getting yourself re-energized, by learning something new at a greater depth, will help you bring ideas back to your organization and think about ways that you could do your job differently or try something else, have a new initiative. And you could also learn something new, not from classes, but through the network. Are you connecting with others who are doing your work, similar work as you, and are you getting to exchange ideas, see what else you could do? Maybe there is other opportunities. Maybe you're happy right now, but perhaps there's another opportunity out there that you never know about. But it could be uncovered by networking and making those connections. So those are a couple of things that I would say to keep it fresh, It sounds like it is a lot about learning for you, and so I would certainly think about ways that you get other experiences.
Thanks, Carly, and thanks to everybody who's a couple folks have let me know that they can't call in because they've got too much background noise where they are, dogs in the house and things like that. So thank you to those of you who are trying to be considerate of everybody else. Carly, our next question, let's take one from Karen. Karen's been working internationally for a DC-based management of aid programs in Africa for 10 years. She's considering a transition to U.S. and domestic work here in Boston, and she is welcoming ideas for how she could present her profile, present her resume as quite relevant. The work she's been doing has been internationally focused. How does she translate that to stay relevant domestically?
Yeah, and so I think Karen, doing the domestically focused work that you'd like to do and get some real insight as to what they see from your experience that would translate. What would they recommend that you highlight? How do you hear it from the person who's doing that work or who would potentially be hiring you to be able to tailor that a little bit better? The other way that you could do that is go to, again, I'm going to go back to LinkedIn. Do a search. I tell people to use advanced searches. Write, the job title of what you would want to do and see everybody who pops up who has that job title, and you could look at how they're describing it. What are they emphasizing? What skills are they using? So another research tool to help you position what you've done, so that way it's speaking the right language when you are going to that environment and starting to interview. So hopefully that helps for you, Karen. It certainly is a leap, but I would say get some more information about how you want to make that connection and connect those dots.
Let's take one more phone call. Somebody raise your hand. Go ahead. Carly, by the way, Karen just chatted and say thank you for that answer.
Oh, you're welcome, Karen.
Jeremy, I appreciate that you don't want to monopolize our time, but go ahead and unmute yourself and ask that question that you've got there. Jeremy, just hit *6.
I think it finally worked.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm sorry I keep asking lots of questions, but I'll make it quick. We talked a little bit about underselling or finding appropriate level positions. It's been sort of a theme the last couple questions. How do you identify that value? What's a good way of doing a personal assessment of kind of where you fit? Because like I said before, coming from the military, there's obviously a transition of what skills were there into now corporate America, and the company did a good job of helping me do that. But now sort of finding my place and where I should be in my career is a little bit difficult. So what's a good way or a couple methods for doing that assessment?
Yeah, and that's great. So let me ask a follow-up question to that, Jeremy. Are you looking to leverage the experience you've had in kind of the business world the last couple of years? Are you looking to make a complete change?
I would probably say leverage what I've been doing.
Yeah, and so if you're leveraging that, what kind of conversations, or have you been having some conversations at this point about where people see you or what level? Do you feel underutilized right now?
Well, I think I have been talking to my current manager about, I guess, career progression, and he's saying that I definitely will fit into management positions at some point. But like I said, I've only been there for 3 years, so I don't know if it's time for me to start applying for those, or, I guess I could try and see if it fails miserably, but sort of seeing that that's going to be a waste of time is also something I'm interested in.
Yeah, and did you have some management or leadership experience when you were in the military? My guess would probably
be yeah.
Yeah, and so I would say, I hear you say I've only been there 3 years. Only 3 years, if you told me only 6 months, perhaps, but if you've got that leadership and that management experience from your past, and now you've got 3 years of experience in your business industry, I think it's well, it's the right time to start putting those together, because it's not like that's a new skill that you'll have to learn. You're just going to apply it in a different environment. I would say, how do you start connecting those dots and showing it? And maybe it means that you need to start taking some additional projects on at your current employer to have more of that kind of vertical responsibility to manage, to make decisions, to demonstrate that you've got that experience and that ability to do that. I think Jeremy just
Okay,
went back.
no, that's
There
very helpful. I just, I didn't want the dogs making noise to disrupt everything, but that is helpful. I guess I just, a lot of the people I work with have been there 20, 30 years. I've only been there 3, so a lot of times it seems like a very little amount of experience.
Well, yeah, obviously, right. And, it's funny, I have another client who transitions out of the military, and she went to a government contract, kind of position, and that's what she had said very much. Well, everyone's kind of, they've been in the same job for a long time. So maybe it might be time for you to move past the environment that you're at if it is an environment that people don't move up very quickly. So that way you could leverage that experience.
Sounds good. Thanks again.
You're welcome,
Thanks,
Jeremy.
Jeremy. Go ahead and hit that *6 to mute out your phone. And Carly, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. We've got just about 4 minutes remaining and 3 questions. Do you think we could try to do like a lightning round?
I will try my best.
All right, sounds good. So I'm going to turn on the stopwatch. You get 60 seconds a question.
All right.
Here we go. Lauren has asked. She is a recent graduate from the College of Arts and Sciences and has spent the last 2 years as a marketing/office manager at a small analytics firm. She wants to further her career in marketing, specifically in the strategy and customer insights realm, but doesn't currently have the freedom to dive deeper into those roles or to move elsewhere. At what point would you recommend going back to school for an MBA or a Master's of Science in Marketing, or should she just be looking for an entry-level marketing-specific role at another company?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I think that question varies by industry, but if you're thinking about marketing, oftentimes people go back to school because they think, oh, well, I can't get a job until I have the degree. I would test that assumption and see if there's another way that you could get a position that will give you that hands-on experience, or do you really need a degree that's going to be something that allows you to gain entry into a position? I would check that out, see if there's another opportunity for you first, before you just went back to school. But my answer would be different if you wanted to do management consulting, right? You'd probably want to go back to school and get the MBA for that.
Perfect. I'm loving this lightning round.
Yeah.
Lisa has asked, if someone is willing to change location, what areas of the country do you see as being hot right now, and will employers pay relocation fees?
Ooh, okay. So that is a very industry-dependent question, right? Because it all depends on where you're working. Something in the Boston area, when you've got life sciences and health, you've got a lot in this area, so it's different. So it's hard to answer that. Will companies pay relocation? I think I'm starting to see companies pay relocation again. I just had a client that I worked with who the organization not only met his salary, but they full relocation of him, his wife, his 2 kids from the Atlanta area all the way to San Francisco. So right skill set, right need, right market, they're willing to do it.
Great. Tanner has asked, for someone who hasn't followed the traditional career path, what do you recommend? My background is that I tried to launch a clothing line. I started a pet care business that I sold. Always been inspired by the arts, particularly film and music, and that's the world he wants to transition into now. I know this is a very specialized niche, so I'm curious how you think I could break into the world. Selecting music for a film is something he's interested in. So long story short, any advice for somebody with a truly traditional non-career path looking to change industries?
Gosh, well, here's what my guess is that, Tanner, you've got the drive and the ability to push past your own limits in order to make things happen. If you've been entrepreneurial and started 2 organizations, 2 companies, that one of which you've sold. So I would say leverage those skills that you have to really look at it as starting a new venture, starting a new company, and that would be making that change. So if you've done it twice before and you've been successful, I think you you just look at the job search and breaking into a new market in the same way.
Carly, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. We're running right up against the 1 o'clock hour here on the East Coast, but I can't thank you enough. You've been so willing to support our alumni. And yeah, any final thoughts for our folks on the call today?
No, I have loved all these questions. They've been fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity. I saw that you had advertised my guide, so if anyone wants some more tips, you've got that. Let me know if anybody wants to talk further. I am offering to everyone who has been an attendee here to give me a call. We could have a 1-hour complimentary conversation if you wanted to learn more about coaching and go deeper. So it's my little bit of a plug there, but love staying connected, so it's fantastic.
Thank you, Carly. We appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Thanks for your great questions. Sorry for those of you that we weren't able to squeeze in at the end there. I hope that you'll consider joining us for our next online webinar in April. On the 22nd, we're going to be offering The Art of the Elevator Pitch, How to Rise to the Top and Not Get Stopped. And that session is actually filling up really quickly, even though we haven't done much to promote it. So if you're interested, I encourage you to sign up now on our website at bu.edu/alumni. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a great day or a great evening.